Hey everyone, Kyle Walker here. If you love cars, fixing things, or just want to understand your vehicle better, you're in the right place. I share hands-on tips, smart driving advice, and straight-up car talk without the fluff. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stick around till the end. You don't want to miss what's coming up. Let's get into
Despite
it.
the fairly large number of varieties of suspension types, most modern cars use only those of their subcategories, in which the main damping element is either powerful springs or hydraulic shock absorbers with a telescopic mechanism. Pneumatic devices are not yet sufficiently widespread. Their predominant area of use is commercial vehicles or passenger cars belonging to the premium class. Not surprisingly, many motorists are simply not familiar with this type of suspension. Our task is to give the reader an idea of what it is, how it works, what advantages and disadvantages it has. What is air suspension? The most common definition of air suspension is a device in which the spatial position of the body relative to the road surface is adjusted by means of air-filled cylinders. Thus, damping is produced by compressed air. You may ask, why is air suspension needed? The answer will be approximately the following. With the help of this device, you can change the clearance of the car. Roughly speaking, your sedan can be turned into a parketnik at the touch of a button, which will automatically increase its passability. When driving on the highway, the clearance can be minimized, reducing the drag coefficient of the car. And if you need to turn aside, on a dirt road, the increased clearance will allow you to effortlessly drive through problem areas with difficult terrain. However, air suspension is characterized by the ability to change rigidity, which can be useful when passing highways with uneven profile. And now let's consider how the air suspension looks like. Design of a typical air suspension. Despite the great variety of design solutions, the standard air suspension consists of a relatively small number of components: compressor, control unit, receiver, air cushion. Let's consider how the air suspension is organized on the example of all the above-mentioned structural elements. Air cushions are the more official name of the previously mentioned pneumatic cylinders. These elastic elements are installed separately on each wheel. Their main task is to keep the car body at a given height from the road surface. Pneumatic cylinders, as a rule, are made of hollow multi-layer rubber of high density, which in the working state is filled with atmospheric air under a certain pressure. Their characteristic appearance is similar to multi-sectional tablets. However, it is not uncommon to find pneumatic cylinders installed on the struts of shock absorbers. In other words, in this case they are an alternative to conventional coiled springs. Compressor is a necessary component of any pneumatic system. It is he who creates the pressure required for the normal functioning of pneumatic elastic elements. The compressor, which is an integral part of the air suspension, consists of the following parts: electric motor, air dryer, solenoid valves. The task of the latter is to ensure the routing of compressed gas. Depending on the design features of the air suspension, in particular, the number of valves, the resilient elements are filled with compressed air either in pairs or individually. The receiver is a suspension element that allows to change the clearance of the vehicle. It occupies an intermediate position between the compressor and the elastic elements. Structurally, it is a metal cylinder with a capacity of up to 10 liters, from which the air through solenoid valves under pressure follows directly into the elastic elements. Thanks to the presence of a receiver, the clearance adjustment is carried out without the use of a compressor, that is, due to the compressed air available in this tank. Air suspension control system is a set of sensors that determine the current characteristics of the car and send this data to the electronic control unit. The number and composition of sensors can be different, but their typical combination is as follows: sensor of acceleration of the vehicle, pressure sensor in the pneumatic system, temperature sensor mounted in the compressor. The ECU receives signals from sensors in real time, processes them, and issues appropriate commands to the actuators. In the vast majority of cases, the air suspension control unit closely cooperates with the stability control system. Among the additional devices that support the functioning of the air suspension are valves responsible for the formation of the necessary pressure in the system, maintaining it at a given level and resetting it if necessary. We have understood what the air suspension consists of, and now we move on to the principle of its functioning. Principle of operation of a classic air suspension. Since the task of air suspension is to change the position of the vehicle body in relation to the road surface depending on the current driving conditions, let's consider how this is achieved. In principle, there is nothing complicated here. By increasing the pressure in the system, we thereby increase the clearance. But we have to sacrifice stiffness. Reducing the pressure leads to the opposite effect. The car sags, the center of gravity shifts downwards, but at the same time the suspension stiffness decreases. It becomes softer, and traveling on the car becomes more comfortable. It should be noted that in most cases the clearance adjustment is a discrete process consisting of 3 modes: normal, lowered, increased. The normal mode is characterized by driving the vehicle on a smooth road at a speed of between 50 to 100 km/h. If the current situation requires driving at a lower speed and on rough roads, it makes sense to use the increased ground clearance. For obvious reasons, all these manipulations are performed in manual mode by pressing the corresponding button. However, there are situations when the automatic correction of the position of the body of the car is used. This is the passage of turns. If there is a sufficient amount of compressed air in the receiver at such moments, the reduction of lateral rolls of the car will be made without the driver's participation. After completing the maneuver, the excess air is removed through valves. Read also the design of the McPherson suspension and its advantages and disadvantages. Varieties of air suspension. Air suspension cannot be called an independent element of the car chassis because in most cases it functions simultaneously with other types of damping devices, McPherson-type suspension, non-split beam, so-called multilever suspension. In general, all such systems, installed standard, can be conditionally divided into 2 categories: simple air suspensions, in which the air element is mounted instead of classic springs, adaptive devices, in which shock absorbers are able to change rigidity dynamically. In this case, the degree of vibration smoothing can occur depending on the driver's preferences or road conditions. Since air suspensions are an expensive element of the chassis design, they are installed either on premium cars or on commercial vehicles, as their presence here is a vital necessity. Depending on the method of implementation of air suspensions, distinguish the following varieties: single circuit, which have a single air line, through which there is a simultaneous change in the position of all available cushions, usually 2 of them, both mounted on the rear axle. Dual circuit cushions are used to change the position of the rear axle cushions separately. 4 circuit systems are characterized by separate lines for all 4 wheels. Single-circuit systems are most often installed on heavy-duty tractors or trucks with increased payload capacity, which are equipped with single-axle, front or rear, air suspension. This type is designed to adjust the stiffness of the entire axle, usually the rear axle, because it is the axle that carries most of the load. Dual-circuit systems are installed on one or both axles. In the case of single-axle configuration, individual adjustment of the left or right wheel is achieved. In the second case, it is possible to change the stiffness of the rear/front axle, which is the same as using 2 single-circuit suspensions. 4-circuit systems are rather complicated to implement, but they provide the possibility of individual adjustment of all 4 wheels. This is a truly high-performance suspension, as the degree of clearance increase/decrease is determined by the onboard computer depending on information from sensors. Especially noticeable is the use of 4-circuit air suspensions when cornering, which in this case are practically not felt due to roll compensation. Pros and cons of modern air suspensions. Since air suspensions are installed on a limited number of models of foreign cars, for many car owners would be interesting to know: what advantages have cars equipped with these systems? And there are quite a lot of them. Variable settings, i.e., the clearance can be adjusted within a certain range. By changing the height of the vehicle above the road, we simultaneously adjust the suspension stiffness. For cars equipped with conventional spring elements, such an operation is possible, but only by replacing the springs themselves. Agree, it can hardly be called a way out. Note that the use of rigid shortened springs really gives excellent results on a smooth rolled road, noticeably improving handling. But at the same time, comfort is on the back burner. If you hit an uneven surface, you'll turn your ride into a torment. Installation of soft and elongated springs will make it comfortable to move off-road, but on the high-speed highway the car will behave unpredictably. With air suspension, all the above problems can be avoided. The driver has the possibility to change from hard to soft suspension with a slight press of a button. In other words, the required compromise is achieved depending on the specific road conditions. Excellent handling is one of the main advantages of air suspension. This is particularly evident when cornering at high speeds, when even a small turning radius results in a noticeable vehicle roll. Air suspension is able to compensate for the difference in the position of the wheels above the road surface. For spring suspension, such a mode can only be dreamed of. However, it should be noted that the absence of roll does not mean the absence of centrifugal force during cornering. Customization options. Since no two people are the same, each driver has his or her own driving style and preferences regarding the car's handling. And if we take into account that in most cases, in addition to the driver, there are passengers in the car, then changing the load will improve the handling of the car, means of achieving exclusivity. For the majority of car owners, bravado opportunity to change the clearance is unacceptable, but there is a category of drivers for whom it is a vital necessity. They will not spare any money for the sake of re-equipping their four-wheeled friend. Air suspension has been used on trucks for quite a long time and very successfully. The possibilities offered by such a system in terms of payload are hard to overestimate. Characteristically, changing the degree of load on the wheels practically does not affect the driving characteristics of commercial vehicles. Recently, both minivans and pickup trucks have been equipped with air suspensions. In these vehicles, indeed, the level of loading can vary greatly even within a single trip. Finally, it is impossible not to mention the excellent performance of the air suspension demonstrated at sub-zero temperatures. This is achieved through the use of rubber elements in the production of air suspension cushions, which are characterized by good elasticity regardless of weather conditions. Thus, it is possible to increase the service life of the air suspension. Read also how the planetary gearbox is organized and works. Considering such an extensive list of advantages, it seems strange that air suspensions have not yet become widespread. This unfortunate fact becomes clear if you know the main disadvantages of pneumatic damping systems. Virtually zero repairability. Regardless of what exactly came into disrepair, it will not be possible to restore this unit. And the cost of air suspension is an order of magnitude higher than systems of other types. So, the improved comfort, achieved at such a high price, is unacceptable for most car owners. Negative temperatures, another scourge of such systems. Although the actual airbag almost does not suffer from severe frosts. But other components can easily fail. Road reagents used for de-icing can just as easily lead to inoperability of the air suspension, which reacts very sensitively to such chemicals. Having conducted a comparative analysis of both lists, we can come to the conclusion that air suspension is the prerogative of only a small number of cars whose owners are ready to sacrifice significant sums for the sake of achieving maximum comfort. In Russian off-road conditions, it would be useful for many drivers, but high cost and harsh winters are an obvious limiting factor. On the way of mass distribution of air suspension, what cars have standard air suspension? It should be noted that the segment of premium car models is not so small, taking into account that in developed countries the middle class, although not often, can quite often count on the purchase of a rather expensive and elite car. And if it is equipped with air suspension, to feel all the charms of comfortable movement regardless of the condition of the roadway. But if your plans include purchase of a model, which includes suspension of this type, then the question arises, on which car's air suspension is better? Therefore, it would be interesting to study the results of the rating of brands and models with standard air suspension. And there is such a list. Its compilers were guided both by the results of special tests and questionnaires of users with a standard list of questions concerning operational characteristics of specific cars. The top 3 such cars look as follows: Audi Q7, Porsche Cayenne, Volkswagen Touareg. It should be noted that all these cars are equipped with suspension elements from the same manufacturers, so their ranking was made mainly on the basis of evaluation of tuning possibilities. From the point of view of efficiency and especially reliability, there are no claims to air suspension used on these models. With practical absence of serious disadvantages, only operation of the discharge valve can be considered as such. In some cases, occurring very rarely, it spontaneously releases air from the receiver, which eventually affects the comfort of the trip, creating additional load on the compressor unit. The list of car brands with standard air suspension continues with the models, the owners of which more often address to the car service with claims related to this structural element of the chassis. All these cars are characterized by their list of vulnerabilities, leading to the need for repair work. Volkswagen Phaeton and Audi i8 have minimal constructive differences between air suspensions. The main disadvantage is weak struts, which should be replaced, according to the regulations, in pairs after 130,000 to 160,000 kilometers. The air suspension of Lexus LS 430 of 460 is reliable enough. Their weak link is considered to be air shock absorbers, which require replacement on average every 130,000 kilometers. The same air suspension is installed on a number of Mercedes-Benz models. W22221, representing S-Class, W211, E-Class, W219, CLS Class. Here the struts have a closed design, so the air cylinders are reliably protected from any external influences. However, it does not affect the resource of the suspension. The front air suspension does not exceed 100,000 kilometers, and the rear one, 20,000 kilometers more. Unlike Mercedes cars, Vogue models from Land Rover and sport models from Range Rover have suspension, which air balloons are of open type, that is protected from wear insufficiently well. There are also complaints about the electronic control unit, which often fails. Allroad of the first generation from Audi still enjoys considerable demand, which testifies to good performance properties of this model, including air suspension. Most often, air balloons fail, and a common practice among owners of this car is to replace the faulty element with springs. The rating of cars with air suspension of W164 models of ML/GL classes from Mercedes closes. Users and owners of car service centers claim that here the probability of failure is approximately the same for all air suspension units, but the undoubted advantage of the design is its repairability. Almost any detail can be replaced with a new one. It should be noted that any aggregate or unit of a car is not eternal, so it is not necessary to be afraid of failure of expensive components. And if we take into account that reliability of pneumatic damping elements grows every year, their prospects do not look so gloomy. In conclusion, air suspension plays a crucial role in enhancing a vehicle's performance and comfort. By using air-filled bags instead of traditional springs, it allows for adjustable ride height, improved handling, and a smoother driving experience. Whether you're navigating rough terrain or simply seeking a more comfortable ride, air suspension offers significant advantages. Understanding its benefits can help you make informed decisions about your vehicle's suspension system, ensuring a better driving experience overall. Thank you for watching, and we hope you found this information helpful.